The lights inside the America's Got Talent theater faded into a soft, expectant dim, casting a gentle glow across thousands of excited faces. The audience buzzed with chatter. Families, couples, superfans, and first-timers filling the room with energy that pulsed like a living heartbeat. Tonight felt special. There was something in the air, a sense that the stage was about to witness a moment no one would forget. Suddenly, the famous AGT opening cue echoed through the hall, and the stage lights burst into life. The massive golden star in the backdrop shimmered as smoke drifted low along the floor. Then, through that haze, a single silhouette began to appear, a small, humble figure stepping into the spotlight with the uncertainty of someone who had never been in a place like this before. He was dressed in an Elvis-inspired suit, not the pristine, high-budget kind you'd expect from professional impersonators, but one clearly handmade with care. The white fabric looked slightly aged, the seams stitched with dedication rather than money. The collar sparkled with hand-glued gems, each one catching the stage lights just enough to show the effort behind them. His hair was neatly styled, not overly theatrical, but reminiscent enough of the king to draw a subtle reaction from the crowd. The audience fell into a hush as he walked forward, gripping the microphone with both hands. His posture was stiff, unsure, almost trembling. It was obvious. This wasn't a seasoned performer used to grand stages. This was someone stepping into a dream that once seemed too far to reach. At the judges' table, Cowell raised an eyebrow, watching him closely with that signature mix of curiosity and skepticism. Sofia leaned forward, smiling warmly as she often did when a contestant seemed nervous. Heidi whispered something to Howie Mandel, probably noting how young or anxious the boy looked. Howie gave a small shrug, waiting for the moment to unfold. The contestant stopped at his mark, swallowed hard, and pulled in a shaky breath. His voice, soft and almost fragile, came through the microphone as he introduced himself. He spoke politely, humbly, thanking the judges and the audience for the chance to be there. His tone carried the quiet voice of someone who didn't grow up believing the world owed him anything, someone used to working, trying, dreaming silently. There was something incredibly disarming about him. No bravado, no overly rehearsed charisma, just sincerity. But somewhere in the audience, a few people exchanged doubtful glances. An Elvis look-alike? Really? On AGT? They'd seen hundreds of Elvis tribute acts over the years, some great, some forgettable. Most imagined he'd be average at best. Yet even with those doubts, there was an unexplainable spark around him, a quiet confidence buried under all the nerves, the kind that said, "I didn't come all the way here to fail." He took one more deep breath, then nodded at the music technician. The stage transformed instantly. Blue lights washed over him, highlighting the outline of his figure. A single golden spotlight cascaded from above, giving him an almost mythical glow. The opening chords of a classic Elvis ballad rang out through the speakers, soft at first, like a heartbeat, then rising with warmth and presence. The Filipino Elvis closed his eyes. The judges leaned in. The audience went completely silent. Not a whisper, not a shuffle, as if everyone collectively recognized that something important was about to happen. For a moment he stood still, perfectly still, the kind of stillness that only comes from someone channeling every memory, every fear, every dream into a single breath. Then, with the music guiding him, his chest expanded, shoulders relaxed, and his grip on the microphone loosened, not because the fear was gone, but because he decided he wouldn't let it stop him. The stage lights reflected off the hand-placed rhinestones on his jacket, creating tiny flickers across his face. His expression softened, transforming from anxiety into a deep emotional readiness. There he was, a young man from the Philippines, standing on one of the biggest stages in the world, facing thousands of strangers and 4 judges known for brutally honest critiques. But he didn't run. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look away. He simply opened his mouth. And the world held its breath. The first note didn't just sound. It rippled through the auditorium like a shockwave. A deep, velvety tone, rich enough to warm the room, powerful enough to silence every stray thought. It was the kind of voice that didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. There was a collective gasp. Heidi's eyes widened instantly. Sofia's jaw dropped. Even Howie, who was mid-breath, froze as if the world had paused for a moment. And Simon, who had leaned back, prepared to judge harshly, slowly leaned forward again, his face tightening with disbelief. You could practically see the split-second shift from skepticism to stunned respect. The Filipino Elvis opened his eyes halfway as he continued the verse, but this time he wasn't nervous. The moment the sound left his throat, something inside him awakened. Something bigger, braver, more certain. The timid boy who stepped onto the stage moments ago seemed to dissolve, replaced by a performer born for spotlights brighter than anyone imagined. The music swelled, and he moved effortlessly with it. A gentle sway of the hips, a subtle flick of the hand. Not an imitation, not a copy, but a natural presence echoing Elvis's soul while staying undeniably his own. His voice had the warmth of Elvis Presley's iconic tone but carried a softness, an emotional honesty that made it unique. It wasn't about sounding like the king anymore. It was about telling his story through the music. The audience rose to their feet in waves. First, a few scattered cheers, then entire rows standing up, as though they couldn't physically stay seated while witnessing something so electrifying. Phone cameras shot into the air, capturing the moment that felt too historic to miss. Even the production crew backstage peeked out from behind curtains, drawn in by the magnetic performance. And on stage, the young Filipino singer grew more confident with every passing second. His voice soared through the chorus, echoing across the theater with such precision that the acoustics almost struggled to contain it. It was powerful yet controlled, bold yet heartbreakingly emotional. You could hear his story in every note. Years of dreaming, years of practicing, years of hoping for a chance like this. Halfway through the performance, he stepped forward, closer to the crowd. The spotlight followed him, turning his figure into a silhouette carved out of pure golden light. The stage lights behind him flickered in red, blue, and gold, making him look angelic, almost unreal. Sofia slammed her hands on the table. "No way!" she shouted, laughing from pure shock. Heidi turned to Simon, eyes glistening. "What is happening?" she whispered. His voice, "It's unbelievable." Simon didn't respond. He kept his eyes locked on the singer, jaw clenched, hands folded, analyzing every second. But something in his expression gave away the truth. The performance had won him over completely. As the final bridge approached, the music softened, giving the Filipino Elvis a moment to breathe deeply. Then he launched into the climactic high note, a soaring, crystal-clear note that cut through the room like a beam of light. It was effortless, perfect, the kind of note singers train their whole lives to reach, yet he held it with a steady confidence that sent goosebumps across the entire audience. People screamed, some cried, some just stared in awe. The note extended, grew stronger, and then dropped smoothly back into the melody like a feather floating to the ground. He finished the final line with a soft vibrato that felt like an emotional whisper. As the last note faded, the room didn't move. There was a single heartbeat of silence, the kind that happens only when something extraordinary has just taken place. Then the entire auditorium erupted. The cheers were deafening. Applause thundered against the walls. Some people jumped up and down, others waved their arms wildly. The contestant, shaking with adrenaline, stepped back, eyes wide, overwhelmed by the reaction. He placed a hand over his chest, as if silently thanking everyone for believing in him more than he had believed in himself. The judges rose to their feet, all four, a full standing ovation. Simon clapped slowly, thoughtfully. Heidi cheered. Sofia looked like she was ready to hug him on the spot. Howie pointed at him with a huge grin, shouting something the microphones could barely catch. The Filipino Elvis stood alone on the stage, breathing heavily, bathed in gold, and completely transformed. He didn't just perform, he claimed the stage. For a moment, no one moved. The final note still seemed to float above the stage like a shimmering echo, even though the music had stopped. Time felt suspended, as if the entire auditorium had forgotten how to breathe. The Filipino Elvis stood at center stage, chest rising and falling, sweat glistening faintly across his forehead. His hands trembled, not from fear anymore, but from the electricity of what he had just done. The judges sat frozen. Simon Cowell, the man who had heard thousands of voices, seen thousands of performances, stared at him with the rare kind of expression that only appeared a few times a season. Not judgment, not critique, but genuine astonishment. He leaned back slowly in his chair, lips parted slightly, as if searching for words that didn't yet exist. Sofia Vergara held both hands over her heart. Her eyes were soft and glassy, full of emotion. She looked like a mother watching a proud, impossible moment unfold. Heidi Klum, still standing from her ovation, covered her mouth with one hand, whispering something to herself. Disbelief, amazement, gratitude for having witnessed something so pure. Howie Mandel shook his head, still trying to process what he had just heard. It wasn't the performance they expected. It was the performance of a lifetime. And through all this, the audience remained wild with applause. Some people shouted encore, others screamed golden buzzer. Many simply clapped as loudly as they could, unable to control their excitement. Phones were raised, capturing every second of the moment for the world to see. It felt like history, the kind of AGT moment that would replay across social media, news channels, and fan pages for years. The Filipino Elvis swallowed hard, trying to steady himself as the chaos around him settled just slightly. He looked at the judges, eyes wide and full of questions he was too scared to ask. Did they like it? Did they believe in him? Did he truly belong on this stage? Simon finally leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. The entire room fell silent instantly. He took a deep breath, narrowed his eyes, not in anger but in sheer intensity, and spoke. "Well," Simon said softly, "I don't think even Elvis himself would believe what we just heard." The crowd erupted once again. The Filipino singer's hand flew to his mouth in shock, his knees wobbling beneath him. Simon continued, now smiling. A genuine, heartfelt smile, the kind that contestants dream of receiving. "You didn't come out here as an impersonator," Simon said. "You came out here as an artist, as a storyteller, as a singer with a voice that is not only powerful, it's unforgettable." Howie nodded vigorously. "This wasn't a tribute," he added. "It was a rebirth. You brought something new, something emotional, something real. People work their entire lives to sound a fraction as good as you just did." Heidi placed both hands on the table, leaning forward. "You took my breath away. Truly, I have never seen someone transform so completely on stage. When you started singing, it was like watching someone step into their destiny." Sofia, still emotional, wiped the corner of her eye before speaking. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "I don't know your story, but I can feel it in your voice. You were meant to be here. You were meant to sing tonight." The Filipino Elvis covered his face, overwhelmed. Tears filled his eyes, not sadness, but a deep, overwhelming joy. Simon watched him quietly for a moment, his expression softening even more. He glanced up at the golden buzzer above him, then at the audience, then finally back at the contestants standing in a flood of golden light. The crowd sensed it. A ripple of excitement spread. The judges exchanged knowing glances. Sofia whispered, "Do it!" Heidi nodded eagerly. Howie grinned like a child about to witness magic. Simon stood up slowly. The entire auditorium exploded with screams. The Filipino Elvis froze, shaking his head in disbelief, tears already threatening to spill over. Simon placed one hand on the golden buzzer, paused long enough for everyone to feel their heart climb into their throat, then slammed his hand down with force. Boom! Golden confetti burst out like a tornado of light. The music roared. The audience erupted. The judges stood up cheering. The Filipino Elvis collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed, crying, laughing, unable to believe what was happening. Confetti swirled around him like a dream made real. He looked up, eyes sparkling, face lit with pure emotion as the stage transformed into a golden storm around him. It wasn't just a performance. It wasn't just a reaction. It wasn't just a moment. It was the birth of a star,